We are now on to the 2024 NFL redraft. We are just about a week away from the 2026 NFL draft. And if you haven't been watching all these videos, I've been going through all of the past, 7 years now of NFL drafts, redrafting them here in the year 2026. We are on to 2024. We will be doing one more. I'm going to be doing the 2025 redraft next week, right before the 2026 draft. I'll also be breaking down all the 2026 draft stuff once it happens. So if you want to see that, if you want to see any other draft coverage for the actual draft coming up, make sure to subscribe. Check out all the other redrafts if you want. And let's jump into 2024. This was the quarterback draft. We knew that going in. 6 quarterbacks ended up being taken in the first 12 picks in the actual draft. I don't think all 6 are going to go in the top 12 in this redraft. And you can make the case that not all of the 6 quarterbacks should be drafted at all in this redraft. The top 3, though, are still going to be the same, because between Caleb Williams, Jaden Daniels, Drake May, all 3 of those guys have had success. And they've also had some pretty big success, especially only being 2 years in. So all 3 of those are going to stay the same. The question for me is just, how do you put those 3 in order? Because we're now in the 2024 redraft. It's different than when I was doing the 2019, 2020 draft, where we've had 5, 6, 7 years of seeing these players, and we kind of know who the best players are. Now that we're in the 2024 redraft, and certainly for the 2025 redraft that I'll do next week, it's kind of hard to judge these guys after just a couple years. But yet that's the exercise, and that's what we're going to do. So we have to not only take into account what we've seen the first 2 years, but also start to project and be like, if I was redrafting now, who has not only been the best the first 2 years, but can project and be the best player, throughout their career. So that's the question, especially at the top with quarterback. Now, there's an argument to be made that Caleb Williams should be the pick again. I think that's a really good case. Has he had the best career? No. And I would argue, if we're just basing it off of the 2 years, I would argue Caleb Williams is probably third. Jaden Daniels had the great rookie year, looked to be probably the best out of the 3, struggled with injury, struggled a little bit more in year 2. That was when we had Drake May come up, almost win MVP, and have probably one of the best second-year quarterback seasons ever. Caleb Williams hasn't necessarily had those highs, and yet I still think there's a good case that he's going to be the best quarterback in this draft. I think when we look ahead in 5 years, it's not out of the realm of possibility he's the best quarterback. So there's a really good case for him to be the number 1 quarterback. He looked really good last year with Ben Johnson. Having said all that, I'm going to go with who I think is a little bit safer of a pick in Drake May. And I'm going to have Chicago taking Drake May. After the season we just saw, I said it might have been one of the best second-year quarterback performances ever. It's up there at least with a lot of other guys who have made Super Bowls in their second year. I think you got to go Drake May, because we've seen what might not even be his ceiling, but we've seen him perform as one of the better quarterbacks in the league. And he's still really young, and he still has a lot of room to grow. So I think that's got to be the pick for Chicago. I know some Chicago fans, some other people may say the traits of Caleb Williams will eventually propel him past Drake May, but I think right now Chicago's just got to go with the safe pick. And I don't even want to call Drake May a safe pick, because it could be he's a top 5 quarterback for the next 10 years. And New England's certainly hoping that. But I think that's where you got to go. You got to take Drake May after we saw. In 2 years, this might change. In 5 years, this might change. But I think Drake May is the option at 1. Then I'm going to go Caleb Williams at 2. Again, you could go Jaden Daniels. I don't think there's necessarily a really bad choice between the 3. But after what we saw with Jaden Daniels last year, which a lot of it wasn't his fault, but injuries are a part of the game. If we're talking quote unquote safe, like we did for Drake May, Caleb Williams is the safer pick over Jaden Daniels. Now, it could be Jaden Daniels is the best quarterback in 5 years. Could be that the injury concerns, he gets through them, has another healthy season next year, and reminds us why he's one of the best young quarterbacks in the league. But there's just too much risk for me to take. So I think Caleb Williams goes 2. Jaden Daniels is going to go 3. He's still a good quarterback. New England obviously wants Drake May, but I think they'd still be happy with Jaden Daniels. But I think just the risk of injury, just the risk of him maybe not having as long of a career as the other 2, I think that puts him 3rd. But to me, those 3 quarterbacks are easily the top 3. They were the top 3 last time. They're still the top 3, just in a slightly different order. So May, Caleb Williams, Jaden Daniels, go 1, 2, 3. Now we get to 4, and that's where Marvin Harrison Jr. was the first non-quarterback. I'm still going to go with receiver. You can make the case on a couple other players, but I still think Arizona goes receiver. They're just not going to go Marvin Harrison Jr. And we're going to talk about Marvin Harrison Jr. when we get to him, but he's not going to go 4. I'm going to have Malik Neighbors go in this spot instead. It was a really good wide receiver draft. Quarterbacks kind of overshadowed it, but a really good receiver draft. Marvin Harrison Jr. was one of the best receiver prospects we've seen in a long time. He hasn't been bad. Again, I'll save all that talk for him. But there was a lot of people that thought Malik Neighbors was just as good of a prospect. And some people even had him higher. Yes, I know he tore his ACL. We didn't really see him last year. But he's an elite receiver. And I think probably still the number one receiver in this class. Arizona takes him at 4. 5, the Chargers had the choice. Do they go offensive line or do they go receiver? They now can't pick Malik Neighbors. They could go Marvin Harrison. They could go another receiver. But I'm going to just run it back with Joe Alt. Another player that we've only seen for 1 year because he did get hurt. But the idea of having Rashawn Slater and Joe Alt as your bookend tackles, 2 of the best tackles when they're healthy, is just too much to pass up. So Chargers, I think run it back with Joe Alt. I'm sure he'll be healthy. He will be one of the best tackles in the league. Chargers are happy with that. 6, Giants can't go Malik Neighbors. Again, couple receivers they could go. I'm going to go with the best pass catcher I think is left. Not a receiver, though. I'm going to go Brock Bowers at 6. Giants still need weapons, especially without Malik Neighbors. They desperately need a weapon. You could argue a receiver, but I think Brock Bowers is the best option. You could make the case he's the best tight end just in football. Trey McBride, a couple others would have some cases. But Brock Bowers, when he's healthy, to me is still the guy. Even just 2 years in. Giants would be happy taking him at 6, even though I'm sure they want Malik Neighbors. Pick 7. This is where we're going to get to all the offensive linemen in this draft. Again, quarterbacks was the focus. A lot of fun receivers, but also a lot of fun offensive linemen. And in particular, a lot of intriguing potential tackles. That was kind of the conversation going in. 2 years later, I think it's still the conversation. But a lot of tackles and a lot of offensive linemen that are going to go in this redraft. And we got to kind of figure out the order. Because for a lot of these guys, maybe they're not the best tackles right away. So you got to project with some of them. And so we're going to have that first one go at 7. It's not going to be J.C. Latham. I'm going to have Olu Fashanu go 7. He went a few spots later. He was the second lineman off the board at 11 to the Jets. The potential is there. And I'm not saying he's one of the best left tackles right now. But what he's shown, and especially how he grew this second year, he has the makings to be an elite left tackle. And I think he's already starting to show signs. So if you can get a young left tackle, that's where you're going to go at 7. Even with other quarterbacks on the board, in this redraft, Cam Ward is obviously on the Titans still. Don't really need a quarterback. You need to protect him. And J.C. Latham's been fine. Another one of those players that I think will project to do better. But Olu Fashanu has shown more flashes. Hasn't been totally consistent the first 2 years, but he's shown a lot of flashes. And that's what Tennessee needs right now. They need an elite young protector for Cam Ward. I think that's Olu Fashanu at 7. 8 is when we saw the third quarterback go. And it was surprising at the time in Michael Penix Jr. I'm going to go with a different quarterback. I still think they pick quarterback. They're just going to go with a different one in Bo Nix. And I'm going to have Bo Nix go 8. It was really surprising at the time. Like I said, quarterback didn't really seem like a need. And you could make the case that they shouldn't go quarterback. They should fill the rest of their roster. But now that Kirk Cousins is gone, and it's now Michael Penix Jr., along with Tua. Tua might be a factor as well. They have a lot of the roster in place. I think they have a decent defense, which they finally have a pass rush, finally have a defense. They have all the weapons that a quarterback could need. They have Bijan, they have Drake London, Kyle Pitts is still there. They just need a quarterback. And they hope it's Michael Penix Jr. this year. We'll see if that's the case. But if you put Bo Nix in the system, it might not be as good for him as it is in Denver, but it's still a good system for a quarterback to come in. So I think you go Bo Nix. One of the better quarterbacks, depending on how you feel about him. You can make the case he should go higher, but I think 8 is his floor. And Atlanta's happy getting him at 8. 9, Bears, I think they still go receiver now for Drake May instead of Caleb Williams. But I still think they go receiver. They let go of DJ Moore. They're happy with Rome Odunze and Luther Burden. But if you take Rome Odunze out, suddenly receiver is in need. So I still think they go receiver. And as much as I love Rome Odunze, again, we'll talk about him once we get to it. I'm going to go a different receiver. I'm going to go Brian Thomas Jr., who might be maybe a controversial pick after this past year. If we were doing this last year, if we were doing this redraft in 2025, Brian Thomas Jr. would be the easy pick at 9. You can make the case the Giants take him at 6. You can make the case the Chargers pick him at 5. Maybe even the Cardinals pick him at 4. He was an elite rookie receiver and really had a sophomore slump, if you want to call it that. I don't know if it was growing pains with Liam Cohen's offense. I don't know if it was just the drops. I don't know, drops can kind of build on themselves and you can struggle with that mentally, but not a good year. I do think that was an anomaly. I'm not saying he's going to be the receiver we saw his rookie year and grow into a all-time great receiver, but I do think he is still one of the better receivers in the league, or at least one of the better young receivers. So he's still worth taking. It's a conversation between him and Rome Odunze. It's a conversation now between him and Marvin Harrison Jr., but I'm going to go BTJ as the second receiver off the board. Then we get to 10, and this is where Minnesota took JJ McCarthy. I'm not going JJ McCarthy. I'm actually not going to go quarterback either. Make the case, maybe Michael Penix comes in. But now that Minnesota brought in Kyler Murray, I think they can kind of roll with that and help the rest of their roster. So I can just go best player available if I'm Minnesota, and I'm going to help my defense, and I'm going to get Jared Verse, the pass rusher defensive end from the Rams. Went later in the first round, but he's turned into one of the best defensive players in this draft. Certainly, I have him as the number one defensive player in this draft, but one of the best defensive players in the league. And I think he has, as hard as it is for me to say as a Seahawks fan, I think he has defensive player of the year potential. I don't know if he will actually get there, but that's how good I think he is. So to me, not a hard choice for me for Minnesota. Helps this defense, and they can go Kyler or elsewhere at quarterback. I don't think they go JJ McCarthy again. Jets at 11. You could go another tackle because you need to replace Olufashanu, who went 7 to Tennessee. Instead, I'm going to replace one of the guys you just traded. And I think this is another example of just kind of best player on the board, getting a really good player. I'm going to go Quinyon Mitchell at 11 and essentially slot him in for Sauce Gardner. Yes, this leaves a hole at tackle, but to me, Quinyon Mitchell is just too good of a player to pass up at this point. You created a hole when you traded Sauce Gardner. You can do something else for your left tackle. Geno Smith is their quarterback now. Figure something out with the offensive line. But I think you just need really good players. You traded one of them with Sauce Gardner, albeit good value, so I think it's a good trade. But now you need corners, and I think Quinyon Mitchell fits in at 11. Then we get to Denver at 12, and you can't go Bo Nix anymore. Top 4 quarterbacks are already off the board. So I debated a different position, and I said, okay, if you can't get quarterback, what does Denver really need? Because they are one of the better teams in the league. They're trying to win now. They have a really good roster. They just kind of need a quarterback. And so you can make the case, maybe they go offensive line. Still some good tackles on the board. Some good defensive players, a couple of receivers they could consider. But I'm going to go Michael Penix Jr. instead. And I'm going to take the bet if I'm Denver and say he's going to stay healthy in a really good system set up for a quarterback to succeed. I'm going to bet that Michael Penix Jr. can do that. Now, there's a big if on his health. And if we do this redraft in a couple years, could be that he just doesn't go this high. But I still think if he's in the right system, if he's surrounded by good talent, we saw it in Washington in college, he can be a really good quarterback. He makes some of the best throws you're ever going to see. So the talent is there. He just needs to be put in the right position. And I think that spot is Denver. Denver still goes quarterback at 12. 13, Raiders, obviously devastated. They can't go Brock Bowers. So we're just going to go best player available and start this run of tackles and offensive linemen. And they're going to take the one from New Orleans who's picking right after them. They're going to go Talise Fuaga at 13. Fuaga, along with Kelvin Banks, looks to be one of the best young tackle duos in the league. I think up there with the Chargers, Joe Alton, Rashawn Slater. Fuaga is going to play right tackle because Kelvin Banks is your left tackle, but he's been a really good right tackle already. And you could make the argument he's the number one tackle in this class. Certainly could end up that way. And if I'm the Raiders, I just need talent. Their offensive line was a mess with Ashton Genty. Yes, this leaves a hole, obviously a tight end, but with your pass catchers. But there's just not a tight end that you would want to take at this point. And if you can get set at your offensive line, I say this in every redraft, that's a good pick. You can get solid offensive linemen. I think Fuaga, at a minimum, is going to be a solid offensive lineman. He is showing signs he will be more than that in the future. Then 14, Saints can't go Fuaga because he was just picked. So they're going to stick with a right tackle. And I think has been one of the most solid players from this draft. He's not flashy. He may or may not have maybe the ceiling as some of these other tackles. But I'm going to go Roger Rosengarten at 14, who went at the end of the second round to Baltimore. And he's just come in and been a good right tackle right away. Similar to Fuaga, who's just come in and been a great right tackle for the Saints. I think they kind of just replace his production, solidify your tackles, give Tyler Shuck good protection. I think it's a no-brainer move to replace the right tackle. It's a question of who you want, but I'm going to go Rosengarten at 14. 15, this is where we got finally the string of some defensive linemen. And this is where Jared Verse went a little bit later. He obviously went first. But now you're going to get some more defensive players. I am going to go defensive player for Indianapolis. I am not going to go Latu, who went 15. I'm going to go Cooper DeJean, the second Philadelphia cornerback off the board. He didn't have that much of a role his first year, but stepped in, had a big role this year, and turned into an All-Pro. So you can make the case he should go a lot higher. Indianapolis is going to kind of stop his slide. I don't think this is the case where he's a good player that kind of gets boosted by the system. I do think he is an All-Pro level player. I think he probably just got there a little bit faster because he is in Philadelphia, but a really good player. Pair him up with Sauce Gardner. You got another great cornerback duo. Yes, you need some pass rush if you're Indianapolis, but too good of a value to pass up at 15. And then 16, I'm going to go with one of the few picks staying the same. I'm going to go Byron Murphy back to Seattle. This is similar to, I think, the last redraft where we had Devin Witherspoon going back to Seattle. Murphy's an underrated player. Kind of had a slow start, or at least didn't have maybe the production and the stats his rookie year. But stats went up. I think he had 7 or 8 sacks this year as a defensive tackle. And he's just one of the best interior defenders in the league already in year 2. He gets pushed down a little bit because of his position, but it's one of those things that he's probably more valuable to Seattle than he is to other teams. So they are ecstatic to bring him back. Part of their great defense. I don't think they think twice if he's there at 16. 17, we had Dallas Turner go initially in that kind of string of defensive linemen going in the initial draft. This time we're going to go offensive line. And as I said, there's a lot of offensive linemen. We're going to take the first interior offensive lineman and go Zach Frazier at 17. He kind of stepped in right away and was just one of the best centers in the league already. He's helped solidify Pittsburgh's interior line, and Minnesota just needs offensive line help. A lot of their problem has been injuries. Christian Darrisaw has been hurt. Will Fries was hurt. I think Zach Frazier can come in, be your center of the future, and just solidify your offensive line because they need it desperately. So Zach Frazier goes 17. 18, I'm going to stick with Amarius Mims going to Cincinnati. This is the first time I have, I think, not a defender going to Cincinnati, but basically all the redrafts are defense or offensive line because that's all that Cincinnati needs. And Amarius Mims, I think, is one of those tackles that maybe not as good so far as like a Roger Rosengarten, certainly of an Olu Fashanu, but the potential is there. And certainly a better second year for him this year. He has the potential to be an elite tackle. And if he can get there, that's huge for Cincinnati. We've seen signs of it, and I think seen enough that I'm comfortable taking him at 18. Could be in a couple years. Never really turns out they need to replace him, but I think for now he stays the pick at 18. 19, Rams can't go Jared Verse, so they're going to go another player on their line that they got in this draft. They're going to go Braden Fisk, who they got in the second round. You can make the case he doesn't deserve to go this high, but I think the Rams want to keep their guys together. I think Braden Fisk has been good for them. Better rookie year to me, but still a good interior lineman, good pass rush from the inside, which you always need. So they don't want to lose both Verse and Braden Fisk. So they're going to go Braden Fisk at 19. 20, another offensive lineman coming off the board. I'm not going to go Troy Fontanu, who I do like. I'm going to go J.C. Latham in this spot, who was the first lineman taken initially, who went 7. He's going to fall a little bit. I think it's been a little bit shaky. But again, when we're talking potential, guys like him, guys like Amarius Mims, who just went, they have the potential to be elite offensive linemen. And I think in J.C. Latham's case, could be that he's an elite guard. Could be that that's the scenario. But I do see a path, at least for him to be an elite left tackle. And elite left tackles don't grow on trees. I think we got a lot of good options in this draft. Why we see a lot of offensive linemen. JC Latham is the latest at 20. 21, this is where we're going to have the slide stop for Marvin Harrison Jr. And Marvin Harrison Jr. is going to go 21 to Miami. I think this is just a value play for Miami. They went Chop Robinson initially. Been a good player. Nice pass rusher for them. They just need help everywhere. So the question is, who's the best value on the board? Marvin Harrison Jr., to me, is still going to be a really good receiver in this league. Is he going to be worth the 4th pick? I don't know about that. Is he worth all the legendary comparisons we were making when he was coming out of college? Probably not. But he's still going to be a really good receiver. And they no longer have really any receivers. Tyreek Hill's gone. They traded Jalen Waddle. So Marvin Harrison Jr. would be a nice rebuild piece for them. So they are going to go him at 21. 22, Eagles can't go Quinyon Mitchell, who went earlier. So they're going to go the next best corner, at least outside of the guys that were on their team initially. They're going to go Nate Wiggins at 22, who has been a really good corner for Baltimore. I think is the best way to just replace Quinyon Mitchell as best you can for Philly. Philly is probably one of the bigger losers, losing both their corners. But they get Nate Wiggins, a good corner who can step in and kind of replace Quinyon Mitchell as best he can. 23, we're just going to kind of swap around receivers. Brian Thomas Jr. already went to Chicago at 9. Jacksonville is going to be okay, and they're going to get Rome Odunze at 23. Similar to Marvin Harrison Jr., I still believe Odunze could be a good receiver. And at times he's shown he's been a good receiver in the NFL. He had some, I think it was foot problems. He had some injury problems last year. I think that kind of slowed him down. But when he's healthy, I still think he's a really good receiver. And I think Jacksonville is fine kind of swapping receivers. Maybe not the high ceiling that Brian Thomas Jr. has, but still a really good receiver. So I think he's still going to go in the first round, falls a little bit to 223. And then I'm going to go his college teammates at 24. I'm going to go Troy Fautanu to Detroit at 24. They went Terrion Arnold. Hasn't really worked out. And now there's some legal trouble that he's in. So we're not going to go Terrion Arnold. You could go a few different ways if you're Detroit, but what made them really good was their offensive line. And that's starting to slip a little bit. So I'm going to plug Troy Fautanu in. If you want to try to move him back to left tackle, pair him with Penei Sewell. Or if you want to make him a really good guard, I think he'd be a really good guard. Either way, you just need help at offensive line. He was hurt his rookie year, so we didn't see a ton of him, but looked good this year. He's obviously not going to play right tackle with Penei Sewell, but you could slot him in anywhere. Detroit just needs offensive line. I don't want to say help. They just need some offensive line reinforcements. I think Fautanu would be that at 24. 25, another offensive lineman went in Jordan Morgan. Hasn't really worked out so far. There was a lot of them. A few of them were bound to be, I don't want to say bust just quite yet, but not as good. You could make the case a couple other offensive linemen are worth taking here, but instead we're going to give them their second round pick because I don't think he would last all the way there, and go Edgerrin Cooper, who was the linebacker taken in their second pick. He and Quay Walker have turned into one of the better linebacker duos, and I think they want to keep that together. He's been really good ever since he came in. You don't see a ton of off-ball linebackers go really high, but when you have a good, especially young off-ball linebacker, I think that's the pick, especially at 25. It's good value, and they want to keep him in the building. 26, Graham Barton started off okay last year, I think, but I don't think enough to be the pick after his year this year. So we're going to stick to the interior line. I'm not going to go a center. But we're going to go Dominic Pooney at 26, who is another one of these 49ers players who I think is a really good player. He's just dealing with injuries, like pretty much the whole roster. And I do think injuries played a part in some of his performance. If he's healthy, I think he's almost just a plug and play guard. And at a minimum, you're going to get probably above average guard play. I think he has the ceiling to be an all-pro guard. Just like with every 49ers player, it's injuries. And maybe if you get him out of San Francisco, maybe he doesn't have injuries and as an all-pro guard for Tampa Bay. But who knows? Maybe it's just him. We're going to go 26. He could rise if he stays healthy. Could fall if he can't. 27, Arizona is going to stick with the pass rush. They're going to go Laitu Latu at 27. He fell a little bit. He went 15. He falls now to 27. I think he's a good player. I kind of feel the same way I did when he was coming out of the draft. Maybe not as flashy of a player. I don't know if he has as high of a ceiling, but just a good defensive end and has been solid for the Colts. Arizona just needs players that will come in and play and just be solid. Seems like they're busting on a lot of picks recently if you're Arizona. So you need somebody who can come in right away and contribute. I think that's a lot to at 27. And then 28, people are going to disagree with this. You're going to say he should have gone a lot higher. If this is the case for Kansas City, this is a home run. They are not going to get Xavier Worthy, who's been fine for them. They were going to get Ladd McConkey at 28. Now, yes, the name is probably bigger than his value, I guess. And that's not at all to say that Ladd McConkey is not a valuable player. He is a very valuable receiver. He's been really good for the Chargers. I just struggle to fit him in anywhere else because I still was going to go Marvin Harrison Jr. I still was going to go Rome Odunze over Ladd McConkey. You could make the case that, I don't know, maybe Green Bay, you want to add another receiver to their group. You can make the case, Tampa Bay, they lost Mike Evans. Arizona, they just need talent. Maybe they should have gone him. But regardless, Kansas City is probably high-fiving because you can get Ladd McConkey at 28 is really good value, and specifically is a player they need. They need someone who can be a safety blanket for Mahomes, and just imagine McConkey in that system. I think would be incredible. So you might think he doesn't last to 28, but I have Ladd going 28 to Kansas City. 29, Dallas is going to take their namesake. They're going to take Dallas Turner at 29. Another one of these pass rushers who's been solid. He went 17 to Minnesota. I don't think he's been a bad rookie and bad second-year player, but falls a little bit. Dallas could use some, Dallas Cowboys, I guess I should say. They could use some outside pass rush. I think that's what Dallas Turner does. Good fit. They could use him. He's been a solid player. I'm fine with him at 29. 30, we're going to keep passing around cornerbacks. You can't go Nate Wiggins, so you're just going to take the next best one. And to me, that's Kamari Lassiter, who went a little bit later. He went in the early second round initially. He is another one of these players that is probably, or if not one of the best number 2 corners in the league. And that is not because he is a bad corner and he is a number 2 corner. That is because he plays with Derek Stingley Jr. in Houston. So you slot him in for Nate Wiggins. He's their number 1 corner, and I think Baltimore is happy with it. He's one of those underrated players who probably should go higher. Maybe you can make the case that Philadelphia takes him over Nate Wiggins. A good player who gets overshadowed a lot, but he's been good. And part of that Houston, just elite defense. Then 31 and 32, San Francisco and Carolina both went receiver, but I'm not going to go receiver for either one, despite the fact Ricky Pearsall, you can make the case. Instead, 49ers just need talent. They need guys who are going to stay healthy, more importantly. And they lost Dominic Pooney, so I'm going to slot in another kind of plug-and-play guard in Mason McCormick, who between him and Zach Frazier have just come in, solidified Pittsburgh's interior line. That's kind of what Dominic Pooney did. 49ers can't get Pooney this time, so they're going to put in Mason McCormick. If he stays healthy, that's an even better option for them. So Mason McCormick goes 31. And then 32, I'm going to slot in a player who probably would go in the second round. Maybe doesn't deserve to go this high. Maybe you disagree. Maybe you think he should go higher. But I'm going to go AJ Barner, the second tight end off the board. This is one of those players that I think is more of a projection, I want to say, although he's been good for Seattle. Kind of an important part of their offense, important part of their Super Bowl. I think AJ Barner has the potential to be a top 5 tight end, which seems like a lot. But if you combine his blocking and his receiving, because he is one of those well-rounded tight ends, there are not a lot of tight ends like him. And yes, this is going to be a projection. I'm not saying he's a top 5 tight end now. But if his receiving can catch up to his blocking ability, you have one of the better tight ends in the league. And so I think Carolina needs receiving help, but they also need tight end help. They can get that with AJ Barner. So that is all 32 picks for the 2024 draft. A lot of quarterbacks. You'll notice JJ McCarthy was not one of them. I do think he probably gets picked early second round. I still think somebody gives him a chance. He's still really young. I'm not writing him off quite yet, but I think where we're at, I don't think he gets picked in the first round. You may disagree. Other than quarterbacks, fun receiver draft, fun offensive lineman draft, kind of a weak draft for defensive players. Still some fun ones. Still a lot of good corners in this draft in particular. Just not a lot of big time edge rushers, which we typically see. But other than that, a really fun draft and a really fun draft to look back on. And it's still early. That's the key. We're still only 2 years in. If we do this in a couple years, could be completely different. So I'll try to refresh these every couple years. We're still pretty early on in a lot of these guys' careers. So that will do it for 2024. As I said, 2025 is coming up next week. NFL draft just right around the corner. So if you like this video, make sure to check out all the other redrafts all the way back to 2019 that I've done so far. Make sure to like this video, subscribe for all future NFL draft content, along with lots of other things. And we will see you next week for the 2025 redraft.